Hi guys, so I wanted to quickly give you guys an update. We had some of you guys try to set up your Devo account, and then we understand it can be a little bit of a tedious process. So we were actually able to get this resolved where we will be able to set up your account on your behalf. So you don't have to do that. We'll take care of that on your behalf. The only thing will be previously we were gonna allow people to set up multiple NDLC registration under one account. So if you have one REsimpli account, we were going to allow multiple registration under one account. We will no longer allow that. So if some of you guys are using, most of you guys are using REsimpli for, the CRM purposes, lead follow-up and buyer management. And if you want to set up a separate entity for your prospecting and use REsimpli, then you will currently need to set up a separate account for that. So with this change, we will not allow, and which is a very small percentage of people. So it made sense for us to do that. There's a few of you guys who've reached out and wanting to set up multiple entities, one for your prospecting, one for your, your lead management business. So if you must do that, then you will need to set up two separate REsimpli account in order to do that. But as far as NDLC registration is concerned, so you don't need to set up your own account. We will take care of that on your behalf. We will set up separate account for you guys. But one thing I will say is very, very important is please make sure, it's a very, very tedious, very long process right now. So please make sure that on your website, every single form has the opt-in option. Make sure it actually has a checkbox. You don't just want language because, even though you want that, it is literally manually somebody reviewing your application. Like I mentioned on a call Friday. So somebody is literally going to your website, making sure everything matches up. So even if they notice that, you have the proper language, but a checkbox is missing, your application will end up getting rejected. And then you go back into the queue. So right now it's taking, about couple of months for it to get approved. I do anticipate it to get much faster once we go past the deadline, so August 31st deadline. And I understand not all of the applications that 10DLC applications that we have will get approved. But unfortunately, there's a big, major bottleneck at the carrier level. So when we're submitting the applications, we're finding out from our carriers, they're suggesting, hey, you must use a toll-free number for your text message if you must do that. So keep that in mind. And with that, another thing to keep in mind is we're already noticing that some spammy campaigns use cases are already getting suspended by the carrier. So you want to make sure you're very, very diligent with your usage and, use it for lead follow-up and not for prospecting. I would stay away from using text message for prospecting just, while your campaign is getting approved. And then, while we have a little bit, we wait and try to get some more information on how this 10DLC thing is going to shake up for everyone, because it's such a new thing and it's a very subjective approval process based on the individual that's reviewing. I really suggest that you guys are mindful with how you're using text messaging. So again, use it for follow-up. And then, of course, if nobody replies stop, automatically, they will not receive any more messages. We'll block them on our end, so you don't have to worry about that. But please make sure you have the opt-in language in your website on every single form, not just on contact us, not just on your homepage, on every single page. So if you're using REsimpli website, you don't have to worry about that. As soon as you check you want privacy, the opt-in language, it automatically goes on every single page. So we already make it 10DLC compliant with that. But if you're using your own website, you want to really make sure that every single form has that checkbox and with that specific language that is required. And then also on the text messaging, if you're using REsimpli, be very mindful of not using it for prospecting. So if you're using dialer, only send text messages to people that are more responsive and not every single call that you're making and you're sending them a text message, because technically you don't have an opt-in. So you don't want your registration to get rejected because of that, or if it's already approved, you don't want your campaigns to get suspended, because if it does get suspended, all the phone numbers that you have in that campaign will automatically get suspended. So you won't be able to, let's say Verizon suspends your campaign, then all the phone numbers that you have in that campaign that got approved, none of those phone numbers will be able to deliver a message to Verizon, for example. So we've already noticed some of those campaigns getting suspended. So I want to make sure that, I stress the point that you want to be very mindful of how you're using text messaging. So any questions on this? Any questions on 10DLC that you guys have? Just want to make sure, I know Danielle has some questions that she's been getting, so I want to make sure I answer that. But any questions you guys have on the 10DLC process? Hey, Mitchell.
Hey,
Michelle?
hi, Sharon. How are you? Yes, it's
You
me,
are.
Michelle. All right. So Daniel, I had a question regarding our website. We're working on it with the checkboxes and form and everything. Though we
Mm-hmm.
used Rise Properties LLC before, and now
Okay.
we submitted a 10 DLC registration that we changed to Rise Home Buyers. So should
Okay.
we change our URL as well in the website?
Well, it is very important that your company name is going to match your website and email domain, unless, of course, if you
Okay.
have a different DBA. So if you have a different DBA, that's perfectly fine. You just have to provide and be ready with your DBA document.
All
So
right. Okay.
that's fine. But then
So
again, if your company name and website and email domain does not match, and there's no other DBA that you are using, then of course the registration will get rejected.
All right. I came in late, so we're still at Plivo, right, for the registration?
no, so you don't have to worry about the registration. We will do that on your behalf. The only
Oh,
thing
great.
that changes is if you are looking to set up, you have one REsimpli account, you're looking to set up two separate 10DLC registration under one account, that is no longer possible. We were going to allow that, but if you want two different 10DLC registration, you want to use one for prospecting within REsimpli, one for lead management, then you must use two separate REsimpli accounts in order to do that. Okay.
Oh,
But if
okay.
that's not the case, then you don't have to worry about that. If you're just doing one registration, then you don't have to worry about that. So we will do the registration, but please make sure that your entity name matches with the EIN number that you have for the company.
Yeah.
And then your campaign also matches with your campaign use case also matches with the actual messages that you will be sending.
Okay.
So sure,
Okay.
From the last meeting, you guys wanted us to go and do the whole thing on Plivio or whatever it's called ourselves.
Right.
So now you don't want us to do that.
Yeah, so you don't have to do that anymore. We
Okay.
were able to set it up on our end. We were able to talk to your backend. The only thing that changes is it's for a small percentage of people. If you wanted to set up two separate 10DLC with REsimpli, you will need to set up two separate accounts. Previously, we were going to allow to do that, but we will no longer allow to do that. So if you want two separate 10DLC registration for prospecting for lead management, then you must have two separate REsimpli accounts, again, which is a very small percentage.
Are they going to get confused because I started my account and with Danielle the other day?
No, they won't. Yeah, we will take over that registration. I mean, with the follow process.
Okay. All right, good. My hands are off. I could stop.
Yeah.
Yes. And Brett, I'm gonna update you. I'll text you with that. I'll take care of your registration. So I got everything that I need for your registration, and I'll just be in touch if there's anything else. But for now, you don't need anything else.
So just so that you know, there's a two-part process. When you submit your information, one is your brand registration, your company. That usually is a fairly quick process, but it's the actual use case, the campaign registration, which is the use case. That is the one that's taking about a couple of months right now. But again, I do anticipate it to start very much faster after the deadline. But unfortunately, because of the deadline, things are very, very slow. So it's and then also, yes.
I was wondering if you can send us out an email with some first wording to use in text messages, with the opt-out language, just so that we don't get in trouble. Like you were saying the other day about, saying to stop or anything like that, that would help us look better when they're looking at our text.
Okay, yeah, so I'll send that, and then Daniel send this sample message flow. One thing to keep in mind is, Daniel, in that message, that when you're submitting that, it should actually have your website and your company name in it. So it should not just be a placeholder for company name and website address. That's another reason why it would get rejected. So you want to make sure you're actually putting in your company name and your website address. So if you look at the 10DLC opt-in that we have on REsimpli, it automatically fills in your website name. So let me show you kind of, I was doing Max. So this is what the 10DLC message will look like. So if you notice, it auto fills the company name that you have. So that's what you want to make sure you actually have in your system. I mean, if you're using REsimpli, it will automatically fill that, and it fills in on every single form that you have with a checkbox. And that's how you want to make sure. A lot of you guys were trying to put it in contact us. If you do that, again, it will automatically get rejected. You want to make sure every single form that you have on your website has that opt-in, especially the homepage. You know, somebody who's manually reviewing, they probably would not go into every single page, every single form, but you know, you don't want to take that risk. On REsimpli website, we automatically add it to every single form on your website. But if you have a non-REsimpli website, then you really want to make sure that it's on every single form you have that. So if they happen to, you know, whoever is reviewing it, if they happen to go on contact page, whatever page you have, that they see that opt-in language. And then this is the opt-in language that you will use. Okay. All right, so there was a question. Yeah, and then again, just the sample messages that you are sending for your campaign, please make sure it actually has your company name and not just a placeholder for company name. That's another reason for it to get rejected. And then Mary has a question. Can you confirm exactly what will happen on August 31st to September 1 with the carrier? So Mary, what will happen is if your 10DLC registration is not approved, then starting September 1st, your text messages will not get delivered. Again, I want to iterate that it only affects your outgoing text messages. So if that were to happen, if let's say 10DLC is not approved, your outgoing text messages will not get delivered. Your calls will go through, your emails and everything will go through. Just only your outgoing text messages will not go through. If somebody sends you a text message and you try to send them a text message, my understanding is your text messages will not go through to that person.
I have a quick question, Sharad.
Sure, go ahead, Rigo.
The privacy policy.
Right.
So I have a REsimpli website. So
Okay.
that's that you said that's included on every page, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So we also have it on the privacy policy. Should go down. So we also have it on the privacy policy right here. And then on every single page, we have this. So you want to make sure you have this, and then you can do this by going into your settings page. So if you go into a settings page, you have this allow privacy policy checkbox for lead form. So you want to make sure this is yes, and then you should see something like this this checkbox. Okay.
Okay.
And then
cool.
if you see the older one, just do no, save it, and then just do yes. So reset to the latest one. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep. No worries. No worries.
Hey, Sharad, this is Mary back again. Sorry.
Hey, Mary.
So, you know, over the weekend, I submitted the application for the 10DLC. And so what I'm hearing from earlier in the call is that the carriers are behind. It should take 30 days, but they're behind, at least by a couple months.
Yeah, I would say it right now it's taking about a couple of months if everything is absolutely perfect. Go ahead.
So if I'm having conversations with people via text, I mean, literally, like, you know, if I have a contract with someone and they're texting me after August 31st, I will not be able to, they will not be able to receive a text from me and receive
that's what we are being told. That's our understanding, that after August 31st, unless your campaign, everything is approved, they will not receive any messages. That's what we are being told.
That's not good. That's not good.
That's absolutely not. And it's like everyone. So it's affecting everyone. What I would do, let's say if ever me, my 10DLC was not approved, I would just get like until it gets approved, I would just get like a burner cell phone. and just use that to communicate with like just very important leads that your properties that you have under contract or that you have pretty close to getting them under contract. Or I would get a toll-free number to communicate.
Oh, well,
Those
that's
are-
okay. So okay, that's good then. So I like in our numbers, I do have a toll-free for the buyer.
right.
So that could be a substitute then, using the toll-free number.
So you would want to make sure you have a toll-free number for sellers also.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So that's the Band-Aid until
Correct.
approved.
Correct. Yes. And then also, it's not just you get approved and then you're home free. You also want to make sure once you're approved that you're not spamming people. Very, very important that you're not, because you could get approved. Let's say you get approved today, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean you're good. You know, like you're not gonna, your account or your campaign is not gonna get suspended. If you start sending spam messages, let's say your use case that you put in was to follow up with leads that are, you know, accepting our offer, for example, right? That's your use case, and we provided a couple of sample messages. However, when you are sending messages, you know, you're sending to prospects and saying, hey, are you still looking to sell your house? Or, you know, I'm still interested in buying your house. Are you still looking to sell? So if your use case doesn't match with the actual messages that you're sending, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of people that start opting out of your messages,
right,
you will probably get your campaign suspended. By campaign, I mean, so when I'm talking about campaign, I'm talking about campaign that you have with carriers, which has multiple numbers. Okay, so then all of those numbers will get blocked by the carrier that suspends your campaign.
Okay, so it sounds
Okay.
like then I need to continue to use launch control for any future types of follow-ups when there's masses, because yeah.
Correct. But even with that, I mentioned a call on Friday. So you're creating your profile through different software, different platforms with the
Yep.
carriers, right?
Yep.
So think of it like, you know, for example, you're using launch control for prospecting, but you're using the same registration information, right? Same company name, same EIN that you're using at REsimpli. Let's say if you're sending a lot of spam messages through
Right.
launch control,
Mhm.
you know, they will definitely suspend your campaign. That's one thing. But the worst case scenario is that they could also suspend your brand. Suspending your brand means that they block you across all platforms. And that's
Gotcha.
something you want to be really, really careful about. So I
So you-
mentioned like, so if you're doing prospecting, text message prospecting, I would set up a separate entity
Correct. That's what I'm
from
doing.
your lead follow-up, and then make sure
Gotcha.
it's totally separate from each other. They're not like related in any way. It should
That
not be Mary buys houses 1,
Right.
Mary buys houses 2. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. No, that makes
yeah.
sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
So that's what I would do. You would not want to risk your lead follow-up business because of prospecting
Correct.
to clients. So again, this is very new. I'm just giving you information based on what we have, and it keeps changing. Like it seems like every week there's some new information. So I'm just giving you based on kind of information that I have. I would just be very conservative with cold text messages. It does not affect calling. It only affects outgoing text messages. So I'll just be very mindful about how I'm using my outgoing text messages,
Okay.
so as not to affect my business as a whole.
Is there what kind of notice and how we will receive feedback that I've been approved or not been approved? Is that an email straight to me from the carrier?
No, you will get a message from us. So if you are approved, you will see on your account that all the numbers will show as linked. Okay, and then we'll also let you know that your brand and campaign are approved. But if once you are approved, here, let me show you this. This is kind of what it will look like. So for me, it was here. Do you see my account? I mean, do you see my
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
So this is my account. So all my
Gotcha.
everything got linked. So it shows linked. Because
Okay.
for me, I had a pretty straightforward registration. It's max house buyer EIN. So everything like just matched for me. So everything like got approved. But even if there's anything missing, if it says Max House Buyer as my company name, and then my entity is Sharad Mehta LLC, those two don't match, automatic rejection.
Okay, great.
Eventually, this will be, right now it's a manual process, but eventually I expect this will be automated. But right now, just so that you know, because the carriers are trying to meet the deadline, the default response right now is no, if there's even a minor mismatch.
Okay, great. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
Hey,
Right.
Sure.
Hey,
Also,
Andrew.
oh, go ahead. Yeah, if there's a mismatch, as he said, so the name that we registered our website through REsimpli versus the LLC's name, and we've already submitted the 10 DLC through you guys. Do you recommend we resubmit it with the same, change the name of the website to mirror the LLC?
I would, because if there is a mismatch between your website name, so if your website says Andrew Buys Houses and your entity name is Max Buys Houses, there is a mismatch, so it will most likely get rejected.
Okay, so even if our website, the name that I wanted for the website's not available, if it says Andrew somewhere, it should be considered a match, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's again, this is a very subjective process. It's literally a human going through and reviewing it, so it's hard for me to say.
Right.
I would be very conservative and say, because the entity name is what you have, right? Let's say if it's Andrew Buys Houses, then I would find some variation of Andrew Buys Houses Florida.com.
Yeah. Okay.
There is some match. No one is like, my understanding is like the person who's reviewing your 10 DLC, they're not like going through the entire website and trying to find that. It's they just see, okay, it's Andrew Buys Houses, but the website says Max House Buyer, rejection. That's the impression we are getting, is those are the reasons why it's getting rejected. If there's any mismatch, it's just the default response right now is no, rejection.
So just submit a ticket to pull the 10 DLC submission back and then resubmit it with the entity match.
Yes, so yes, do that. And Daniel, let's then do that, then go ahead and resubmit Andrew's information.
Yes, Andrew, if you could send me an email, please, so I could look into it. Also, just to share, we have some registrations with just 2 to 3 letters difference of the company name and the website and email domain. The carriers rejected it. So they're very particular. They wanted everything to match. And we thought at the beginning, like in my case personally, I thought they're not cross-checking with IRS. But if you're saying that you have a DBA and you did not actually like present a document for DBA, the carriers are cross-checking it with IRS. So if they would check there and you don't have like a registered DBA, then the registration gets rejected as well.
Well, no, there is an LLC, but it doesn't match the name of the website that I registered to REsimpli, so I'll have to resubmit.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
If
so you
could
would want
have
to
it
make sure
matched.
the name.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I think the whole idea, Andrew, behind the 10 DLC was like to prevent spam. And think of it, it's like, think of a company like Amazon, right? They would operate with the same branding throughout. The company name, the branding everywhere would be same. So think of it like that. You would want to make sure that the brand name that you have for on your IRS document matches with the branding that you're using for your customers. So if there's a mismatch, then like the default right now is no. I'm sure that will improve, as we go past the deadline, once it's a little bit, we don't have this huge bottleneck of approval to get through. Once it goes past that, I'm sure it will be a little bit better process. But right now, because it's so subjective and it's just easier to reject an application than to just look deeper into it, if you know what I mean.
Okay, thank you guys.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Daniel, what other, so there's some questions. These are cold call leads being generated by batch or launch control. Yeah, so Andrew, if your leads are not opting in via website, and then, so think of it like if you send a message to someone, right? So if someone opts in through your website, then they're opting in through the website, that's one thing. But if you initiate a text message to someone, then you need to have a language, something along the line of reply stop to unsubscribe, okay? So it's something, if I go back to our website, So it's just basically all you want to do is just keep it very simple, give people option to unsubscribe. So if you go something like this, text stop to unsubscribe. So you want to have something along those lines when you are sending a message to someone. And then Daniel, remind me, we'll include this in email on like what language you need to have. And I'm sure you will start noticing from like I just purchased, I just bought a car last week. And then the first message I received from the dealership, the person it said something along the line, reply stop to stop receiving messages. And then there was another company that just sent me a cold text message about something. I replied stop. And then the next message was, you will not receive any messages. And if you want to opt back in, reply start. So those are kind of the languages. So you want to have something like this. If you have, let's say if you're using launch control, and then you send a message to the lead, this is the first, you should have something like this in your first message. I'm sure launch control will have, some more instructions along those lines. But let's say if you're using REsimpli dialer, and then you send them, you call them, they don't pick up, you're sending them a message like, hey, I just left you a message, wanted to see if you're interested in sending, selling your house. Make sure it includes this at the end of the text message. Okay, we will automate this so you can easily check and then it will automatically add it, but you want to make sure that when you are sending it, for anybody that has not opted in, you're giving them the option of, how they can unsubscribe.
Okay, so all the drip messages will eventually have this message, even though they're like needs to be.
They will.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're not, then what you do is you are just massively increasing the chances of getting suspended by the carrier. So what's going to happen is like initially it will feel like, imagine like right now it feels like, oh, this is going to slow down my business, having this opt-in on every single of my website, of my form. But imagine if everyone has to do that, then the person who wants to sell a house, like they won't have to go through the same process, right? So it's not my website, it's everyone's website. So it's going to be a level playing field. Once this all settles down, that you're not the only one who is sending this text message and having that, like everybody will be doing. And you'll start noticing also, like if I had this experience with a dealership and then a couple of other companies texted me and I started noticing that all of them have the first message, have that text stop to unsubscribe. That's how they're getting me to opt in. That if I don't do that, that means I'm implying that I'm opting in. But at any point in the conversation, if I reply stop, then I automatically am, blocked out of any conversation from that person. And then if I want to re-engage, I can text start to that number and I can re-engage.
Okay. So just one last question around this, Rod.
Sure.
The leads coming through any sort of a dialer, clearly we're having leads sent in from the anybody who's maybe
any like call to batch dialer, any sort of dialer. Yeah.
So when the leads come in, they're just getting pushed into REsimpli directly. So when we start initiating any sort of SMS follow-up with them, that's where the opt-in will come in.
Exactly. Because when you had the conversation through cold calling, you did not get their opt-in, right? So when you're sending them the message, you're saying, we'll send an email with that language that you want to include. And then that's the language you want to include in the first message, right? And if they don't reply stop, that means they're opting in. But at any point in the conversation, they can reply stop. But you also want to be mindful of just including that language does not mean, that means you're being compliant. However, if you're sending messages to a lot of people and, a big chunk of those people are opting out, that tells the carrier that you're sending a lot of spam messages. So that could get your campaign suspended. So you don't want to do that. You want to engage leads to text message. Those are a bit warmer leads where you're not going to get people to opt out. So because, the algorithm, the way it's going to work is the more people start opting out of your messages, that tells the carrier that you're sending a lot of spam, then, their customers don't want to receive these kind of messages.
Okay.
And then you could have, just to be clear, you could have within your account that you could have multiple campaigns within that. So meaning multiple use cases. So they could they could suspend one campaign, the other one might be open. But if they start, if they notice like similar messages that you're sending across campaigns, then they could they could suspend multiple campaigns, and then eventually they could end up suspending your brand also.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, basically, just think of it this: like all carriers want is for you to send messages to people that have opted in. Now, if they opt in through website, then you have the checkbox to opt in. But if they engage with you through a call, initially you're sending them a text message, then you want to, in your initial text message, you want to include that language for people to opt in. And then this way you have a way to prove. So think of it like if you had to prove to carriers that you're only sending messages to people that are opting in, how would you do that? So think of it like that. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. All right, Daniel, what other questions do we have?
Sorry, just
Yeah,
want
go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to ask if, for example, I'm nurturing a lead and we're doing follow-up messages, just casually conversing. Should I still have that open language with me while I text them back?
The first message that you're sending them should have that.
Yes.
How about the replies? Is it fine that we don't have?
Not all of them, just the first one.
Oh, just the first one.
Just the
Okay,
first one.
all
Like
right.
that's out there. Like you don't have to re-opt them in with every message. You're just getting them to opt in through the first message you're sending them.
Okay, all right. So
Right.
another thing, this might be a different, the different compliance thing, but we also leave voicemails for the people that we nurture. Is it something that we should continue doing?
Yeah. Voicemail, it does not, like as of right now, it only affects outgoing text. It does not affect your outgoing calls, incoming
Yeah.
calls, incoming text messages. It only affects your outgoing calls.
So they don't have to opt in with voicemails. We can leave it as is if we want to.
Yeah, you can leave them as is. Yeah, it's the first text message that you send them. That's you basically telling people that, hey, you're opting in to receive text messages, and this is how you could opt out.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Brett, great question on the PPL. So what applies to us is going to apply to all the PPL companies, like Need to Sell by House Fast, Fast Home Offers, whatever company you're using. So they will have their own opt-in form for their website, and it will be specific to their company. If you get that lead, the first message I'm sending them, I would make sure I include the language in them because they did not opt in with you. They opted in with a different company. Now, I don't know how it will work for pay-per-lead companies because this is what's kind of required to include in your opt-in. Your information is secure and will not be sold to third parties. So now with the opt-in, the pay-per-lead, the whole business model is that they get the leads and then they sell that information over to you. I am not sure how that will work, but anybody that you are getting information for, I would make sure that you are getting them to opt into your messages. Okay, and then you're not relying on, because Need to Sell My House Fast will have to have their own opt-in language on their website, and it would be relevant to Need to Sell My House Fast. So their opt-in, Need to Sell My House Fast opt-in doesn't transfer over to you by default because their opt-in is only restricted to them. You get that information. I don't know how this will work because they're sending they're sending information to third parties basically. But they might have a different language they might need a different language on their website. But first message you send them, I would make sure that you get them to opt in. And then anybody that's opting in through your website, you already have an opt-in from them. And then it does not, Reddit does not affect ringless voicemail. So ringless voicemail, outgoing calls, and incoming text messages, those don't get affected, so you can keep them as is. And Daniel, what other questions have we received?
We still receive clarifications in those that, the registration has been already completed. For additional phone numbers, if you have new numbers that you will be adding, moving forward, you don't have to worry about them. We are the ones that's going to be adding it to your existing campaign, as long as, of course, your campaign is completed.
Yeah, so once your campaign is approved, Daniel, that's a great question. So once your campaign is approved, I believe you can have up to 49 phone numbers in that campaign. So we will add those phone numbers automatically as long as it's under the 49 phone number limit, unless you want to have a separate campaign for different use cases. But if you have one campaign approved, any new numbers that you buy, we automatically add that under that campaign, and then it should automatically get linked up. But if you want to set up separate campaigns for some reason, then we can do that. But right now we're only doing it for one campaign per user, unless you have more than 49 phone numbers. Cool.
Hey,
Can
Sharon,
you-
just to clear it regarding the
Sure.
PPL lead. So we use two different companies. And when a lead comes in, we should have another opt-in language with our website, correct? With our company
Yes,
name and website.
with your company name, correct. So they will have their own opt-in that they have, and then you will need to have your own opt-in. So their opt-in does not automatically get transferred over to you. Now, again, like, need to sell my house fast, for example, they may not even be sending a text message. So they may not even need an opt-in on their website, because what need to sell my house fast is doing is they are getting the lead information and then sending it over to you directly. So they may not even need an opt-in on their website, because they're not the ones texting, they're just sending information over to you. So you are the one who's required to get that person to opt in.
With our company name and website. Always.
Exactly. With your website, when you're sending them a text message, you don't need to include your website. You just need to say, hey, whatever message you're sending. And at the end, you need to say, hey, text stop to unsubscribe.
Okay. All right. Just company name could do. Thanks.
Yeah. Correct. Yes. Yeah. So you don't need to include your website when you're getting people to opt in through the text message.
Can you please write an example just in a chat so we can kind of see like what you would use?
Yeah. Let me find one. I'll get it from the carriers. Again, this has been through, I'm just going to get it directly from our carrier. And I'll include a link to this also. Yeah, so you see this, that you're subscribed to, like, whatever your company name is, or something like reply Y to subscribe to recurring automated messages, or, like see something like this, reply help for help and stop to cancel. We'll get exact messages for, or like opt-out would be something like, say, something like this, reply stop to unsubscribe. Okay. So it may get to the point right now, at least what we've noticed is that you can include this language, reply stop to unsubscribe, but it may get to the point where you actually have to send them this message, reply 1 to subscribe, so they're actually opting in. Like this one is more like, hey, this is how you can opt out. This would be, hey, this is how you, like, can you please confirm that you're opting in? And I've received some of those messages with the company, some companies, so this is being a little bit more conservative, where you're actually getting people to, hey, can you please reply this specific word back to me that you are subscribing to receive messages from us. And I'll include this link. And we'll include some in the email follow-up email that we send out. We'll include this information. Yeah, and Daniel put something in the chat also.
Yeah, and Sharad, I think we will have to come up with other samples that we can send over. Like,
Right.
if we could email blast it. Also, the button right now for 10 DLC registration in REsimpli has been disabled, but Sharad, we will be putting it back in, right?
I'm sorry, what button?
The 10 DLC registration button.
Yeah,
when
they
you
can.
log in.
Yeah, they can submit the information to us. So we already have the information. So we'll continue. You can still submit the information through the website.
Yeah, but not for now because it has been disabled. So I'll talk to Sandeep about it.
Yes.
On when he will enable it again. Yeah, I think
Yes.
we're just transitioning over because of this process. That's why.
Exactly.
But we'll be having it back. Mhm.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so right now I would, at least the understanding is that you need to include the opt-out messages, but we'll confirm with our carrier, if anything has changed and where you actually need to include the opt-in language. So you're getting people to like, hey, this is like, can you please confirm that you're opting in to receive messages from us? Yeah, but to go back to paper lead, I would definitely make sure that you include that in your messages and not assume that those automatically get transferred over to you. You don't need to do that with your pay-per-click that are coming through your website, SEO that are coming through your website, because those people are automatically opting in. Same thing on the direct mail. If you send out direct mail, that person responds back, and then now you come conversing through text message, make sure you include in the first message opt-out language. Cool. Yeah, guys, this is a very fluid process. It keeps changing on us seems like every week, and even on our provider, it keeps changing. So it's like we're at the mercy of cell phone carriers, whatever rules they have. We have to follow those rules and don't have any influence on that. So the best we can do is make sure the information that we are submitting is compliant with what the carrier's latest information we have, and then just go based on that. Any other questions?
Yes, sure. I have one other question. You were
Sure.
referencing for your campaign. Are we talking about campaign specific to the number, or just overall my entity with REsimpli?
No, so when I talk, sorry, it's a little confusing. So with the carriers, so when we are registering your 10 DLC, first thing we have to do is get your brand registered. And then after that brand, which is a fairly quick process, after that, we have to get, they call it campaign, which is basically use case. Okay, so if you are saying, hey, this is my company, Mary buys houses, and then, all your company information matches. So first thing is your brand gets approved, that, okay, company information looks fine. The next part of the process is the campaign, which is basically, okay, what is your use case? Your company is approved, but why do you want to send messages to, let's say T-Mobile, say, why do you want to send messages to T-Mobile customers? And that's what your campaign, that's what they call campaign, which is basically what is your use case for sending messages to them.
Gotcha.
And then you need to include a couple of sample messages of what your messages will include. And those messages, I think Daniel included some of them in the chat. So you want to make sure it has that, and you don't want to have placeholder. You want to have actual, company name in those messages.
Yeah, I used the two examples that was on in the registration process through REsimpli. You guys provided the examples already.
Right. Yeah, and then you want to make sure, like those we provided as an example, you want to make sure that if the messages that you are sending a little bit different from that, then tweak it to match with what messages you will be sending. Okay.
So I understand that, but there'll be many conversations in that discussion via text. Is that just purely just like not the first message, whether you want to opt out or not, but the second message, having it similar to what I put in the application? Is that what you're saying? Like the original?
Yeah, basically like intent of your messages, right? I mean, yes, you're going to have a lot of messages back and forth. So, you don't need to include everything. Like, what is the initial intent of the message, right? It's going to be, let's say if it's from direct mail, you say, hey, thank you for calling us through,
right.
Through a direct mail marketing campaign. This is, Mary from Mary Buys Houses, would love to talk to you. And then with that initial message, you want to have the opt-in language.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah,
okay.
No, I just use again, it didn't say in the application process, I saw the examples. And so I pretty much used that with my company name. But not thinking that, okay, well, maybe I have a little different flavor when I'm following up.
Right.
I guess we'll see. I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is, so if like, here's another sample that I pulled up. Brett, good question. Like this is like going to become, standard, for example. So you're basically getting people to double opt-in. Initial would be, hey, reply Y to subscribe to recurring automated personalized marketing alerts, and then you'll say like, appointment reminder, whatever you want to put in from your company name. Okay. Then once they have confirmed, then you would send them something along this, welcome, messages and data rate, apply messages, frequency varies, reply yes, help for help, stop to cancel. This will, and then, link to your privacy policy. So this will become kind of like the standard of you're getting people to opt in initially. Once they've opted in, then you're giving them, okay, thank you for opting in. This is how you can opt out if you need to. And then after that, you can continue your conversation. Okay. So yeah, I mean, again, this is going to become standard for anyone that's sending any text messages. So
it makes me more feel like going back to the old school. I'm calling them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's where your inbound marketing is going to become more important. Right. And then I think another good thing that's going to happen is it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. So now imagine every single person has to do this, right? It doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to only REsimpli user. It applies to every single person, every single company. Like imagine any company that's sending any messages that are not from their cell phone.
Right.
Every company, like you'll start noticing a lot of this. Now, what's going to happen is, so imagine, just think of how easy it is for someone. I was just having this conversation for someone. I think it's very unique to real estate investors that anybody can just say, hey, I'm a real estate investor, right? I have my in-laws that are visiting me from India. They can literally say, I'm a real estate investor, and I have no way to argue that, right? But if they said, I'm a real estate agent, now I can say, oh, do you have a license? Have you gone through your credits and everything? So, part of the problem, we part of the reason why we have these spam messages and this whole 10 DLC is because how easy it's been for real estate investors and other industries to just pull a list, skip trace, and just start.
I think Sharad is having some technical problems or issues. Okay, is there any other questions? Mary, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I just want
yes.
to make sure. So I want to make sure that we have to add, we have to put that disclaimer, if you will, message in the beginning. So simply won't provide that when I'm sending a single text. I will have to make sure that I include that before I start the conversation.
Right. The sample messages that we will be sending out, those are just for your reference. So you would also need to have it custom fit, quote unquote, to whatever text messages you're sending out. But it is just very important you include, how they can subscribe or unsubscribe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The important thing. Sorry, I don't know what happened. My computer just shut off. The important thing to keep in mind is basically anybody that you're sending messages to, you're getting them to opt in. Right now, website, it's easy. You have a checkbox. Anybody that checks that, they're opting in. Right. Then after that, if somebody calls you or texts you, then you want to make sure that you're sending them the initial opt-in message that they're opting in, and then you're telling them how to opt out. Again, we'll send those sample messages. So you're going to make sure you're using that in your communication with the leads. So you want to be very safe. Again, I think it will open up a lot of opportunities because it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for just someone to go pull a list and just start texting them, because that's not going to be an option. So imagine a new real estate investor starts out, right now they can just go buy a list, skip trace, and start texting all in the same day. That's not going to be an option moving forward. If they want to do that, they can pull a list, skip trace, but in order for them to start texting people, they're going to have to go through the 10 DOC process. So then otherwise they're not going to be able to text. So then it opens up a lot more opportunities for people that are playing by the rules, that have everything signed, registered, being 10 DLC compliant, because then you have a lot less number of people that you're competing against. And then every seller that goes to any website will see the same opt-in language for them. So it's not going to be only your website has it, somebody else. No, every website will be required to have that language.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Andrew had a question. Yes, Dan, opt-in will be, so Dan has a question. Will opt-in be necessary if they initiate the contact, hence they call us inbound marketing? Yes, Dan, opt-in will be necessary. Doesn't matter if they initiate the contact, you will still need to make sure that they have opted in to receive messages from you.
Hey, Sherard, sorry, another question. I'm thinking about this whole process because I actually was working on my business plan early this morning, and so this has changed what I need to change. But with the follow-up drips, the drip campaigns that REsimpli has, once they initially opt in, and then if I'm reaching out to them every 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months, what's the rule on that? What's the rule?
That is fine as long as they have opted in. If you're sending a lot of messages to people without them opting in and you're just sending them messages, again, you run the risk of your campaign getting suspended. Meaning if, like so far, just like Verizon has been the most aggressive in suspending campaign, but let's say Verizon suspends your campaign, that means you cannot send messages to any Verizon customer moving forward. So you have to submit another you'll have to get another campaign approved with the carriers, another use case approved with the carriers.
Gotcha. So, for example, I was talking about having possibly sending a campaign on like holidays, to certain groups of people. So that's not part of my campaign in terms of, following up, but will those be flagged?
No, those will not be flagged, because when you will send them the initial message, you're still getting them to opt in, right? I mean, this is like the holiday message is part of your overall marketing. So like I showed on, on my screen earlier here. So it will, again, that's my understanding right now. It may change. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you see, it says like once someone opts in, then it says welcome message and data rates may apply, message frequency varies, right? So it's not that you're telling them, okay, we're going to send you 10 messages, 15 messages. It's just saying, message frequency varies. Like they've initially opted in, but they have the option to opt out at any given time after that. So you don't have to get a separate campaign approved. Again, even the people that you're sending holiday messages to, again, your intent is to buy houses from those people, right? So it still falls within the same campaign. Like your use case would be, I would set it something like, your campaign description could be something like, people that you're sending direct mail to, they're calling you, texting you back. Now you want to send them text messages to follow up. So you're explaining your use case, then you would have a sample message with it. But that doesn't mean that's the only message you can send out. That's basically your main intent of the campaign with the carriers. Okay.
All right. Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Elaine has a question. Maybe I missed it, but does REsimpli have a way for us to automatically add the opt-in language in our first text message to someone, or do we manually have to input the information in our text messages? Elaine, we will get this automatically added. We'll talk to a developer, so it will automatically get added in every single message once like the DLC is in effect. So anybody that you're sending messages to, they have to opt in. And I'll just confirm with our carrier that it's not going to be automatically from the carriers. I believe my understanding is, I could be correct, that it will automatically, once your campaign and everything is approved and it's 10 DLCs in effect, it will automatically start sending those messages. So you won't even have to do that. And Andrew, if we get a second entity for SMS via launch control, etc., and sends leads from launch to REsimpli, how would we send that lead from REsimpli to the second REsimpli entity that is strictly for lead follow-up? So Andrew, think of it like these are all separate entities. So when you send a message from launch control, you are getting people to sign up, opt in at launch control. That opt-in does not automatically transfer over to the other entity in REsimpli. You could tell the other, person, let's say if you're having a conversation with me and I'm interested and you're having conversation to launch control, you could say, hey, Sharad, thank you for showing your interest. I'm going to transfer you over to my business partner and, to different entity, and just explain them the business process. And then say, you may get initial message to opt in, but that's from us. So you can explain it to them. And then once you're having a conversation, then it's easier to you tell the people upfront, then they can easily opt in. But your opt-in from one entity doesn't automatically transfer over to your opt-in from other. And even another thing I would say is, let's say you have the same entity that is approved with launch control, same entity that is approved with REsimpli. Even for that, I would still get them to opt in, because even though it's the same company that you have with launch control and with REsimpli, that opt-in, I would not assume that it automatically gets transferred over, because you have a separate campaign with launch control, you have a separate campaign with REsimpli. I would just be conservative right now, given kind of what we've noticed. I would just be conservative and not assume that it automatically gets transferred over.
Yeah, but Sharad, you did say that if you get slapped on the wrist at launch control, chances are your messages at REsimpli will also start getting flagged, right?
It could, because the use case, your campaign so even though it's the same entity, let's say if you're using the same entity for launch control and REsimpli, right? So your entity is the same, but your campaign is going to be different for launch control purposes than for REsimpli purpose. What we've noticed right now is you could have multiple campaigns under your entity. So let's say if I have my entity REsimpli, within REsimpli, I could have multiple campaigns set up. As if I'm using Vonage, and I'm using air call, I'm using other dialers, or other providers to send text message. I am registering the same entity, but I'm doing different campaigns. So if I get blocked, suspended by Vonage, for example, for now, it may only limit me to Vonage, okay? But that's what we've noticed, that some campaigns, only the campaigns are getting suspended. But if you keep sending a lot of spam messages, then it could spread, your suspension could spread across different platforms, where they could say all your campaigns are suspended. And that's a much bigger problem to have, okay? Again, this is based on the information we have as of right now. There's a lot of things that are changing. What I would do is, it's best to be conservative and just stay away from sending any spam messages, because you run the risk of getting your campaign suspended, and in a very worst case scenario, you could end up getting your brand suspended, which is a much bigger challenge. We haven't seen any of that. We've seen a couple of campaigns get suspended, but then you can appeal, and then you can just go sign up for another campaign. But just be conservative. Like, just the intent of 10DLC is you're sending messages to people that have opted in. So you want to make sure, like, that's what the carriers are looking for. Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, we'll keep you guys updated as we have any additional information. And if we notice any new guidelines or anything, but just the only thing we've noticed in the last month or like 6 weeks or so, that it has become a manual process. So a human being is literally reviewing the application, going through and checking everything. And then the default response right now is no, because it's just much easier for a person to just reject, even if they see a minor discrepancy between the data that you've submitted. So just be careful with that. Double check your data. We also do it on our end when you submit the application, but please make sure you double check the data, and then that everything kind of matches up, and there's no your company name, your EIN, your entity information, your website, all kind of matches up. Daniel, any other questions do we have in the chat? Sorry, I got disconnected there, so I don't know if there was any questions that I missed.
No, I think it's all good, Sharad.
Oh, sorry, Lynn, great question. So what happens is Daniel said, how are numbers tracked for people who reply stop to opt out? Will we have to just remember not to text that person? Or is there a way for it? Yeah, so Lynn, great question. It will automatically, we will automatically stop those messages. I mean, the carriers will block that message. So you don't even have to, like keep track of it. If someone replies stop, then it automatically blocks them from receiving messages from you. All right. And then, so we should be good if there is a text opt-in saved in REsimpli. Yes. So if you have a text opt-in saved, you would have a log of all your messages within REsimpli. So if you have that, then you should be good. And then those will become requirements. So it's not that, REsimpli will have to do that. Like every carrier, every platform will require you to do that. So again, it's going to be a level playing field once it goes in effect, that every single person that is receiving a message from any platform will get the first message as, reply yes, Y to opt in, and then reply. And once they opt in, then reply, stop to opt out or something along those lines. But you want to, for your purposes, you want to keep track of how people are opting in. If you were to get audited, that you have a way to say, this is how the person opted in, that people that you're sending messages to. So again, it doesn't prevent you from prospecting. The only thing is people that you're prospecting do, like you have to send them a message and saying, hey, are you opting in? And as you can imagine, majority of the people that you're cold texting to, they're not going to opt in. So then, then you cannot send them messages. Any other questions, guys? And then a couple of notes if you can take, just and shoot me a message in Slack with that. Just remind me to include the in the email that I send out tomorrow, include the opt-in and opt-out language for anyone that has a question. And then also reminder for people to update their the REsimpli website, the updated opt-in language that we have. And also in the sample messages, it should not have a placeholder for company name. It needs to have an actual company name. And then if you're using a non-REsimpli website, guys, you want to make sure that it is something like this. Like if you look here, it actually has the company name and not a placeholder for company. That's what you want to do in your sample messages also.
What do you mean by placeholder?
A placeholder would be something like Daniel put it in the chat. So if you look at Daniel's message, it says, hi, at first name, this is username with user company name. Do you see that message from Daniel in the chat?
So
Let me send it again.
So is that what,
Yeah.
what we should not be using? What she put in there?
No. So what I mean is, like, so you see the latest message that I sent out,
Yes.
right? So you see the things that in those brackets, like username, user company name, that those are just placeholders. So when you're submitting, you want to make sure you replace it with your actual information.
Oh, so in the
Okay.
text message, I don't
In
want
the-
it to be like at company name. I want it
Exactly. It should be your actual company name, because those are the messages you will be sending. Hey, this is Brett with, Brett Buys Houses. So you
Yes.
want to make sure, like, it doesn't say this is at username with at, my company name. It should be actual information that you want to put in. Yeah. So that's a new guideline. Like,
That's just for the company name. What about our name?
I'll put my name also. Just say, I mean, the company name is the most important, but I would just put my name also. Like, I would actually put my name. So it doesn't have like a placeholder for anything. It's like actually your name there.
Gotcha.
Name and company name, right? So you want to make sure it's like an actual sample message that you will be sending out, just like how you would be sending out to someone. Cool. Any other questions? So what about sellers that we have already been texting with prior to September 1st? Do we have to now send them opt-out language in a text message? Yeah, it's a great question. Daniel, if you can just remind me, we'll follow up with our carriers and then just confirm with our carrier what that would look like. If your messages are not getting, I mean, you should not have to with those people, but again, I would just be conservative and then, get them to opt in. Just in case if you will get to audited, then you have a way to show people that they've opted in. But again, if you've been having back and forth conversation with someone, then it's different. But if you are just sending a new message to someone, I would just make sure you're getting those people to opt in. Yeah, and then every person that you're sending a message to, they will all be getting these kind of messages from every single company. So it's not going to be, that's going to become a new standard for every single person. Like, I'm already starting to notice some businesses that send me message. I'm starting to see those, opt-in, opt-out languages. So that will become standard for everyone. So it's not, again, it will eventually become a level playing field, but it's just a new standard that we are operating with. Again, the whole point is, you should have opt-in for people that you are sending messages to, and keep it to the point where you're not getting a lot of people to opt out. That tells the carriers that, even though you're getting people to opt in, you're sending a lot of spam messages. Yes, Sharice, yes, every drip message, the first message will need to have the opt-in language. We will confirm, Daniel, just remind me, we'll create another ticket with the carriers that these kind of messages, like, is it automatically getting input, or that, we're responsible for getting that input because we don't want to have it sent out twice. So if you can include that, then we'll submit a question with our carrier.
Yes.
Cool. Any other questions, guys? We'll do another call if we have, as we have any other updates. But yeah, we'll continue the registration process as is. And then if there's anything missing or anything that you have submitted previously where you do realize that information was inconsistent between your company name, your website address, please, make sure you resubmit so we can resubmit with the updated information. Otherwise, the default would be your campaign will be rejected, then you have to resubmit the whole information again.
Sherrod, what if somebody
Yes.
calls, let's say, our campaign number that we have on our Google My Business,
Right?
and then we're texting them back because let's say we missed their call or whatever. So do we need to have that language on even when they're calling us first?
Yes, if you're sending them a text message, if you're just having a conversation by calls, then you don't need to worry about this, right? And if they're texting you, you don't need to text them like every time they text you, just call them, then you don't have to worry about it. But
Okay.
if you text them, then you have to include that language.
Gotcha. Okay.
So right now it's only for you to send text messages to someone. Calls, inbound, outbound, nothing gets affected, and incoming text messages don't get affected. It's only if you're sending text messages to someone. Again, in your case, if someone calls you from your Google My Business, they call you, you talk to them, you never need to text them. You can just continue doing your business as usual. Nothing changes.
Right, but
if they text you.
But if we put them on a contacted, no appointment campaign, then we need to.
Yes, then you need to. And then those sort of campaigns, I would be a little bit careful about that. They can come across as a bit spammy. People generally would opt out of those. Then you would want to keep mindful of that. You don't want to get a lot of opt-out messages, which could end up affecting your entire campaign. So again, by campaign, I mean you have multiple phone numbers with carriers under campaign, and then it could end up affecting everything. And Daniel, if you can also check one other thing, just along Brett's question, if you have someone calls in from one number and they opt in from one phone number that you have, and you text them from a different phone number, do they have to opt in from a different phone number? Or does the opt-in applies to all the phone numbers in that campaign? Okay. So we'll make sure, I believe it applies to all the phone numbers in that campaign, and not every single phone number. You don't have to get them to opt in. So if they call into your Google My Business, they opt into that, but now you're texting them from, let's say, your personal phone number, your individual phone number in REsimpli, I don't believe they will have to opt in again. But we'll double confirm and let you know. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, I would start leveraging a little bit of, especially some of the colder leads that you have, maybe, especially if it came from direct mail and you have the correct mailing address, maybe like try to engage them through like direct mail. Lane, it does affect Google Voice number also. And Google Voice, we had already heard people were getting their accounts shut down by Google Voice because they were using it for, again, its personal number is meant for, it's any VoIP number, I should say. It applies to any VoIP number. So it applies to any VoIP number that you have. I believe we used to have a Google Voice, but we switched it over to 10DLC.
Yeah, we switched it over to Vonage. We had
Vonage,
Google
and then
Voice
we had
before.
Yeah. And I believe Google Voice also applies to the same 10DLC. So it's basically any VoIP number that you have. The 10DLC, it's like application to person, that's what it stands for, A2P. 10DLC A2P is application to person. So it doesn't apply to any cell phone number, actual cell phone numbers, any non-cell phone numbers, any VoIP numbers. It applies, the 10DLC applies to that. And then, and we already had few people, this was last year, even before 10DLC was such a hot thing everybody was talking about. We had few people where the Google Voice number got shut down because it was against Google's terms and usage policy, where they were sending messages to homeowners and following up for that purposes. Any other questions, guys? Again, we'll do, as we have more information, we'll do other calls. We'll keep you updated on any new updates we find out, but we'll keep registering you guys. But if you notice, go back, and if you notice anything is inconsistent between the information you submitted, just let us know so we can resubmit with the correct information. And Daniel, you and I can connect about the questions that we have, so we'll submit a ticket to our provider and get those questions answered.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you jumping on the call, and we'll send an email out with the FAQs tomorrow. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.